good evening, and welcome to another edition of the New Black Leadership Coalition here live in the studios of Can Television. The New Black Leadership Coalition here live in the studios of the Can Television Channel 21. My name is Gregory Sain, where you stake your claim, one of the members, co-founders of the New Black Leadership. I am honored, I am blessed, and very, very thankful to have this opportunity once again to say what we believe will make a difference in this movement and the work that we are desperately in need of, the unity and really the fortitude. We have the attitude, but there's some things that's keeping us away from sealing the deal. And we know all of the information. We know what we need. We've been surveyed out. We've marched out. We've met out. We've conferenced out. And I mean, we have all of the necessary information to fix what's wrong in our community and ultimately to fix the world. I have a guest tonight. He's about to walk into the studio, Brother Lance Williams, and he's here, and he's going to join me in a couple of seconds. But let me just say this to you all that are viewing Facebook Live. Can you please share this? Share this now. If you're tuning in, please share this. Share it with your friends because you don't want to miss what Professor Lance have to say. He's a very, very, very knowledgeable brother, and etc. I'm going to put up the overhead real quick so that you can get in contact with us. That's the New Black Leadership Coalition, NBLC, and that's our Facebook. So you can reach us Facebook Live. You can reach us over the internet, etc. right there. So anyway, I am joined by my main man, Brother Lance.
Thanks for inviting me.
Hey man, it's always an honor to have a brother of your, I'm going to say love for knowledge. Love for knowledge, which is love for God, which is power. So connecting that, because it's one thing, yesterday we were privileged and really honored, man, to have Sister Kim Dulaney, Professor Arthur, like you, an author, professor, an activist, etc. So once again, we're honored. And I've been telling people via Facebook Live and etc. that I just mentioned that we have the ingredients, we have the information, we have the surveys, we have the research, we have the data. We've been to the conference, we've been to the march, we've been to the meeting, but we won't seal the deal. And so now, big thing now, Professor Lance, is, the trauma. So we are somewhat inundated with that something is wrong with us, meaning we've been stressed out. We've been traumatized to the degree where we won't move on what we need to move on to fix exactly what is wrong. So, I mean, you've written books, you've addressed many audience as it relates to the street organizations, et cetera. You're a family man. I mean, you're a professor. You've traveled around the world. You've done a lot. And you're a member of the New Black Leadership. But, talking to the audience, in our lifetime, will we see what we need to see? We keep hearing what the government isn't doing, what the city isn't doing, what the state isn't doing, what the elected officials isn't doing. But what is it that we are not doing?
Well, I think the primary challenge that we're having as black people here in in the United States of America, but globally, I would say, is we are not controlling institutions in our communities that build the culture of our growth and development. If you look at how society is organized, at the core of societies that are healthy is a vibrant culture, a value system that is driven by traditional beliefs, attitudes, and actions. This culture, if it's functioning, if it's healthy, should produce institutions that serve as a vehicle to move the interests of the people forward. So those institutions would be your political institutions, your financial institutions, your media institutions, your educational institutions, your family institutions. These are all major vehicles to move the interests of your community forward. So, but the culture has to produce that. And right now, we have lost control of our indigenous culture. It is in the hands of, unfortunately, those who mean our community's demise. And that is our primary challenge at this point, to wrestle back the culture production that is in alignment with our growth and development as a people. We've lost that.
I would agree wholeheartedly. So, subculture,
Yes.
is that what we
Yes.
have, or I mean the various influences? You know, they talk about fads and they talk about trends and etc. Is that what we're experiencing?
Yeah.
A subculture
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of
Well,
thing that's going on with us?
absolutely. And it's even more sinister than a subculture. You know, our culture now, unfortunately, too many folks in our communities have bought into a niggardly culture, unfortunately. And, you know, we are celebrating that culture. If you know, I think one of the things that is really, that we really need to look at, and this is why the work that you're doing, and Minister Michael and the rest of the brothers and sisters with the new Black Leadership Coalition, I think that these kind of events, to understand the importance of engaging media, because media, in order to put
Makes
forward
sense.
your culture, you need to be able to have access to mass communication.
Let me ask you this, because I'm burning with this question. Looking at the back at the street organization. That was
Yes.
a culture.
It was.
That was cold.
Within the but the thing that
Different from now.
Well, yeah, absolutely. If you look at the traditional street organizations, that they were intricately invested and connected to the larger, broader African American community. And so what has happened is, if you trace back the history of those organizations, you will see that at one time, if you go back, like if you go to the early 1900s here in Chicago, that they didn't call them gangs back then. They called them policy families.
Right,
You know,
right,
when you had
right.
the Jones brothers and the Mush Mouths. These were
The Dailies
Well,
ended up being part of it.
yeah,
later on.
well, they were a part of their ethnic group. They were part of the Irish groups that were considered so-called, you know, a part of their underground economy.
Okay.
Because all ethnic groups have these entities. So within the African American community, the so-called policy kings were some of the major culture and business giants in our community. So they were involved in policy. There was bootlegging, but that money that they generated from this so-called illegal economy was used to advance the interests of black folks collectively. So they were using the money that they generated to open banks, you know, financial institutions. They were using their money to be franked by political representation. So they were putting their money into campaigns of elected officials so that their interests and the interests of the community, I mean, and all ethnic groups do this. And so what has happened over the years is that from a political perspective, those entities, the policy kings, were killed off. And when they were killed off, it left a vacuum in the black community for that type of institution. And so that's where we began to see the flourishing of what we call today black gangs. Black gangs are no more than, small social youth groups with no guidance. And the difference between organized crime, the mafia, and the gangs is that the mafia and organized crime use their resources to buy political favor. And they buy, and to become legitimate business entities. Gangs don't.
And that's so funny that you said that. Yeah. So you mentioned bootlegging, policy, now lottery, selling weed. Yeah. Now you have people growing it. I mean, so everything turns into something legal now. Yes. But then when you look at the subgroups, and going back to what you just said, the organizations or young men today are misguided. Yes. A group of youth that refer to themselves as this label, that label, under this particular star or point, 5 point, 6 point. And then when you look at the overall...
And they don't even do that anymore.
Right.
At least when they were
you're right. They
drawn from the 5 point to 6 point, had some type of universal principle that they had to be in alignment with. That doesn't even exist anymore.
Wow.
That doesn't even exist.
And and it's sad because when you said they all had resources, they all had, our community was healthier. And some of those guys who refer to themselves as being in a street organization, some of them still had to come in the house when the lights came on. Yeah. They were still going to school.
Right.
And they were still walking past the elderly, saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir. So what has crept up? I mean, people from a spiritual perspective, they'll say Satan, but what is it that have ushered in this mindset?
It's so it doesn't take much to really see what has happened. What has happened is that the institutions that were in our community that helped to build the fabric have been under attack for the last 30 or 40 years. So our housing, what has happened with with housing in the African American community, what has happened with schools in the African American community, what is happening with the business, all of these major institutions have been under attack for the last 40 or 50 years. Direct attack.
By who?
Have been attacked basically by specifically by what you might call the power elite, which exist in a lot of different forms. They, you have some who have interest in the financial sector. You have some who have interest in the political sector. Some who have interest in, other general business areas, real estate developers. So you can see how black folks have been pushed off of their land, out of their communities. And basically what happens is they use city governmental resources as a vehicle and a tool to displace us from our communities. And so, right now, our kids are struggling with not having a place to lay their heads. They don't have, their families are in total disarray. They don't have a place to stay. I don't think people are really looking at how big of a housing crisis we have here in the city for African Americans.
But we got a lot of abandoned buildings.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about abandoned buildings. I'm talking about the folks that are here. I'm talking about folks who are here in Chicago, black people in Chicago who don't have a home. You have 2 or 3 families living in one unit.
Right.
And some of these larger, apartment buildings. Not the projects anymore, but because those folks have been displaced. So they're out in the neighborhood. They're out in South Shore. They're out in Inglewood. And they're shacking up in people's houses, 2 or 3 families. Sometimes during the winter they don't have, heat. Sometimes they don't have electricity. Sometimes they don't have food. And we have many, many families like that in the African American
And,
community.
and so the government, and the only reason I'm interjecting the government in this conversation, because government is supposed to be the people. But when you think about the institutions, as you just said earlier, so the privatization of everything now.
Yes.
So driven by money, driven
Yes.
by greed.
Yes.
Yet neglecting
Yes.
a group of people.
The most vulnerable in
The
society.
most vulnerable.
Criminalizing them.
And criminalizing.
Yes. Yes.
And so, how? And I mean, just looking at the future, looking at where we are right now, what do you see in your crystal ball as far as the survival of poor people,
Yeah.
black folks, and in terms of, because the media, you mentioned the media, and I said this yesterday, is it's interesting that the girls was on a road trip. While the girls was on the road trip, the men were being once again demised. So you heard nothing but negative news about OJ, Usher, Kevin Hart, Bill Cosby, Tiger Woods, and some of the stuff, R. Kelly. So the media and the stupid TMZ, but the girls was on a road trip, whatever kind of trip they were on, having fun, and making people laugh, which is fine to laugh, but going back to criminalizing black males.
Yes. Well, the media, again, that takes us back to the media. The media has, since the media has always been, a major institution over the last 50, 60 years, but more specifically over the last 20 or 30 years, it has magnified its influence in society. And it has been used specifically as a weapon of mass destruction as it relates to black people. So wherever you see the media generally has been used to dehumanize, to reinforce a new value system for us that's based on a divide and conquer force.
Very true.
So, it speaks to exactly what you're saying. So that in the media, you have a divide and conquer of the black man and the black woman. And if again, the media now is so concentrated, the ownership of media companies in the hands of just a few, and I'm saying literally, a handful of individuals who control everything that we consume in the media, from radio, television, print, books, are controlled just by a handful of white men.
And that's interesting, because when you look at, and I'm going to give the phone number out if anybody want to join the conversation. We don't have long on this air, but you can call 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. The feminization, effeminization
Yes.
of males,
Yes.
strictly from the television.
Yes.
I mean,
And
when
not
you see
just television,
but
film, radio,
fashion,
all of
it,
in the media.
feminizing the man,
Yes.
yet criminalizing the man,
And emasculating the women.
emasculating the women.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's a vehicle. So it has so much power and control. The media now, really, if you wanted to define it in its true terms, it is a culture producing industry. It produces culture. So a lot of people say,
Wow.
this is,
Wow.
man, you got to, this is
Wow.
just music. No, bro, it ain't just music. This is producing your culture.
Subliminal messages.
It ain't even subliminal no
It's
more.
obvious. I mean, it's
Subliminal
just
is an undertone.
Oh, yeah, it ain't-
this
it's
is
overt.
This is overt. This is not passive. This is aggressive.
Wow.
Right. And so what's happening is
Wow.
it is producing culture. This institution is producing black culture,
And our people are busy supporting,
consuming it.
to the max. I mean, so locked in that we can't even go home and just grab, and not to say that we got to read, but, we can have a conversation. If we're not reading, we can talk to somebody. we could, why we have to be entertained? Then they bring out the clowns.
Yes.
So all in the morning, we got comedians that people can't get to work unless they turn on that stupid stuff.
The phone.
Then
It's
they
their
get
phone. It's
home,
their phone.
they gotta watch Power, Empire, the stupid wives, whatever they call it,
Housewives or something. But
and all of that foolishness being programmed,
Yes.
and yet get mad when somebody. But yet now, and I said this yesterday. What about the church?
It's one of the major, the faith or ecclesiastical institutions. That's another one, but it's been co-opted as well.
It's been co-opted.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so again, if you really want to look at the kind of institutions that we need to reverse this, that means that we need to, and just to show you how far away we are from it, you have to control the media in your space. So our black kids right now are consuming per week roughly 50 hours per week of media entertainment.
Wow.
That's
50
that's
hours.
50 hours a week.
It's no wonder.
50 hours a week. We look at our
Controlled
kids,
by who?
when we controlled by those handful of white men that I mentioned to you.
See,
So these are our kids in the car riding with us. Each one of them got one of these, and their face is buried in this from the time that they wake up to the time that they go to sleep every day, all day, even when they're doing their homework. So one of the easiest things and one of the easiest things to do to begin to reverse this is to have a conversation with them, because you can't just you can take their phone from them, but that ain't going. You have to convince them that it's in their interest to push that thing aside. That their global competition is not consuming as much media entertainment as they are. They consume about 13 hours a day. Wow. Their competition, and especially as it relates, about 13 hours a day on this. And I'm not just talking about on the phone doing homework. I'm talking about consuming media entertainment. So when you sleep, or when we sleep, they still up. And you wouldn't, how would you know?
Teach.
How would you know?
Teach.
So this is a major challenge.
So
for us.
we don't have a lot of time left. I think we got just a few minutes, and this is so good, bro. This is so good. I'm gonna play it back myself because it should make us angry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and it's very disappointing, and it's depressing, but there's a way out.
Absolutely.
And
you can fix this.
Yeah, but going back to culture.
Yes.
We have to control our own culture.
Absolutely.
And we have to control our own media.
Yes.
So the messaging that's going out has been for our demise,
Absolutely.
our destruction,
Yes.
not for our upliftment.
Right.
It's been there to make us crippled
Yes.
and dependent on a benevolent.
Yes. But we're very resilient people. And, what happens is, intellectually, I think we have a genetic predisposition at this point because we've been under attack for so long. I think genetically, we realize when we get to the point of our final demise, and we generally correct that behavior. So if you look at, because we've been in this position over and over and over again, and you even see it in popular culture. You'll see it from time to time where there's a wokeness that happens within our entertainment, and we turn into a nationalist, even in our media entertainment. So you saw that in rap music at one time, when it first came out, when it became commercial, it was happy and playful.
That's
and
right.
Sending us off. And then all of a sudden, when it got too happy and too playful, it turned into a political beast. When you get Public Enemy, pro-righteous teachers, and all the 5%, all of them, then it became conscious. And then as soon as it came conscious, again, then they threw in gangster rap right at the moment that it reached its zenith. And then, it beat us down with the gangster rap. But then after a period of time, then we get another resurgence of consciousness, with artists like, Common and Talib and Mos Def. They came up. Then they hit us with another form of, the Southern gangster rap. That stuff came.
It ain't coming.
And now we coming back with another resurgence of Kendrick, and then we're coming with some more consciousness. So, we know when we need to make a change, but in the meantime, we get inundated with a lot of the cultural destruction that is used to, destroy us as a people. But they can't do that.
Profound, man, profound. And so culture is absolutely, we got to wrap this up, but bro, culture is what we need to be looking
Absolutely.
at. And when we say culture, the way we behave,
Yes.
the way we are behaving
Yes.
is not our natural
it's
way
not. No, it's
of
not.
survival
No, it's not.
and etc.
But let me just say this real quick, that institutions build that culture. And so you have to have your own schools, you have to have your independent media companies, you got to have your own banking, finance, in order to build that culture. It doesn't just come from nowhere.
And that's the message that so-called leadership
Absolutely.
should be. And that's why there's a void and a need for new
Absolutely.
black leadership. Man, thank you so much, Brother Lance.
Thank you
Man,
so much
we
for
need an
having
hour. No, we
Well,
got to do part 2.
Yes, sir.
Because, I mean, this is too good not to come back and do part 2. So, next week?
Whenever you want me, bro, I'm here.
No,
Yes, sir.
next week. Thank you all for tuning in. We are very, very thankful to get this busy man, family man here in the studio.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back here real soon. If next week you can make it, I think the people out there would appreciate it. So peace and love. Thank you guys for tuning in. Channel 21, Chicago Cable Access. Peace.